Hello, I'm Dave and this is Logan, out once again for a walk in the countryside. Thanks for joining us. Now today we're at the pretty village of Sutton Poyntz in Dorset. It's located about 5 miles south of Dorchester and 4 miles north of Weymouth. And we're going to be walking a roughly 5-mile circular route. We'll have a quick look at the village, then head east following the River Jordan to Osmington. And then we'll climb up along the South Dorset Ridgeway to the top of White Horse Hill. Passing by the iconic White Horse, we'll then head west to West Hill before dropping down to explore one of the earliest Iron Age Hillforts in Dorset. And then we'll return back to the village. And there's lots to see along the way. Now I'm filming at the end of May. It is one of those glorious late spring sunny mornings, fair bit of blue sky about, a little bit of a wind, but should be perfect conditions for walking. Do come along with us. Now I'm afraid I've still got the remnants of a little bit of laryngitis in my throat. It is improving, but I hope it doesn't spoil the enjoyment of the video for you. Well, I've parked my car at the top end of the village. The name Sutton Poyntz, well, it gets its name from, well, the Sutton bit from Sud and Tun, which is Old English for south and farm. The Poyntz bit was the family name of the lords of the manor back in the 13th century. We can probably see just behind me a delightful little mill pond that was created in the 19th century. And it really is quite idyllic, isn't it? And at one stage there were 2 mills in the village, and indeed a third one in Preston, which is the next village down to the south. Anyway, let's have a little wander about through Sutton Poyntz itself, and we'll start at the northern end. Now this building here is the old waterworks. Used to be the upper mill, and there'd been a mill on the site since at least the 15th century and possibly even earlier. It was sold to the Weymouth Waterworks Company in 1855, who pretty much demolished it the next year and installed pumping equipment to supply water to Weymouth in the south. And I read that, well, for a while, part of the funnel of Isambard Brunel's great steamship, the SS Great Eastern, which was removed in 1859 whilst under repairs following an explosion, was used as a filter in the reservoir for the waterworks. I have found a picture of it on the internet after it was decommissioned from the works. The 18th century mill house is now the waterworks offices. And then just a little bit further south from the upper mill is the mill pond, which we've seen already. Crystal clear water down there. And of course this would have provided a water supply, a water power for the next mill a little bit further down. And just on the other side of the mill pond there, the cottages, which I'm guessing they must have originally been mill workers' cottages, I don't know. This is very much your typical village scene with plenty of ducks enjoying the pond there. And just on the eastern side of the mill pond is the pub, the Springhead, which, well, started life in the 1890s as a hotel. Indeed, it shows as the Springhead Hotel on a 1902 map, and it's built of local stone. Now there were two other pubs in the village at one time. Spring Bottom pub, which I think that might have been what is now Fox Cottage, which is just to the northwest of the Springhead, and the Butcher's Arms, sometimes known as the Three Horseshoes, which I think was near the entrance to Puddle Dock Lane to the south. Well, just a little bit further to the south from the mill pond is Sutton Mill, or the Middle Mill. And a corn mill was built here in 1815, slightly upstream of a previous mill, and it operated until 1981, I think. And I believe that most of the machinery is still in situ, albeit unhung, but not 100% sure. And the mill house next to the mill was built on the site of the old demolished mill. The third mill that I mentioned earlier at Preston to the south closed in 1890. And well, virtually opposite Sutton Mill is this magnificent building, North Down Farmhouse, which was built in 1850, replacing an earlier 17th century building. Well, let me give you a very brief bit of history about the village itself. Well, way up on the ridge on hills to the north are loads of round barrows built around 4,000 years ago, and we should see those later on in the walk. And there was also once a Roman villa to the south, but the first written evidence of a village here was in a Saxon charter dated 891 AD, which showed it owned by King Alfred. But at some stage it was given away or sold by the crown, and after 1212 the manor was owned by the Poyntz family. Clearly the village centred around the stream, and a number of farms were established. In 1925, the lords of the manor, the Weld family, started selling bits off, mainly to existing tenants. But I don't think there have been any working farms here since 1992, but I might be wrong. Now, as far as I can see, there's no church, although there is one in Preston to the south. But there may have been a 14th century chapel here that had disappeared before 1650, but folk aren't actually sure where it was located. And the other thing I should mention is a biennial Victorian street fair that they have here. The next one is due in 2024. Now, our old friend Sir Frederick Treves, in his 1906 book Highways and Byways in Dorset, wrote somewhat disapprovingly, and I quote, "of charabancs from Weymouth bringing hundreds of hearty folk who clamour for shrimp and lobster teas, pelt the ducks in the pond and rot the dignified villagers with unintelligible jibes." It certainly is an incredibly pretty village. Okay, we're going to now head out into the countryside. Incidentally, I've just said hello to a lovely lady, Jax, and her dog. She's a regular viewer to the channel. So lovely to meet you, Jax. And of course, she's now the proud owner of a limited edition Dave's Countryside Walks badge. Well, that's a little footpath sign that I was looking for. A path that's going to take us eastwards out of the village. I should mention that, well, the village name Overcombe was Thomas Hardy's fictional name for the area in his novel Trumpet Major, published in 1880. Now this footpath that I'm following eastwards is basically following the course of the River Jordan, which is a very small river. It's only 3 miles long, and it's got a couple of tributaries. There's this one here, which is also known as the Osmington Brook, which flows from Osmington in the east, and there's also one from a spring in the north known as Preston River. And the two tributaries actually join up at Sutton Poyntz, and then the river flows south out to sea at Bowleaves Cove. Now, where it gets the name Jordan from, well, there's a Jordan hill to the southwest, which possibly derives from Chur and Dun, which means hill by the river, Chur. Chur is a Saxon word for stony or pebbly. Now, as we're walking along here, as I look to the north, we should get some great views of the Osmington White horse, which was created or cut in the ground back in 1808, and it represents King George III, who was a regular visitor to Weymouth between 1789 and 1805. Indeed, he used to ride along that ridge up there, and it's about 280 foot long and 323 feet high. But the king never actually saw it because it was made 3 years after his last visit to the area. A little pit stop just to take in some views. So this is looking obviously to the north, and you can see the White Horse on the side of the hill there, and then the River Jordan is just a few yards in front of me. And then I slowly pan round. This is the footpath that we've taken from Sutton Poyntz across the sort of edge of a field, and then gradually panning round to the south. And this time of year the crops really are coming on. A lot of green, and they're nearly a foot high now. I've just had to put Logan on a lead for a little bit because the footpath goes through a field of some sheep, and you can tell it's spring. Lots of lovely cute little lambs charging about. What a beautiful setting though, with the ridge and the White Horse in the background. Well, I don't know what's happened to the sun. It's all got a bit cloudy. Hopefully it'll be back soon. So we've now reached the little village of Osmington, and this is as far east as we're going to go on the walk. We have been here before. We did a walk both at Osmington and Osmington Mill, so if you haven't seen that video, do check it out. But from here we start heading northwards, and we join the South Dorset Ridgeway, which is a 17-mile long distance path that goes from Osmington Mills to West Bexington. Actually, before we start the uphill section, there's a lovely little restored pump just by me here. Isn't that lovely? And I believe there are a couple of water pumps in Osmington, but you can see this one has been really sympathetically restored. Lovely condition. Well, the next section of our journey awaits, and looks like we've got quite an uphill section. Gradual at first, and then it gets quite steep, and that's going to take us to the top of White Horse Hill. Well, a little pit stop halfway up the side of White Horse Hill just to take in some of the views over to the south. So there's Sutton Poyntz down below, and then our first sighting of the sea today, Weymouth Bay, just over the brow of that little ridge there. And then this is just panning across the south, and there's Osmington, nestled on the sort of northern bank of that ridge in those trees. Well, nearly at the top, and a much better view of Weymouth Bay now. A few yachts out there, quite a windy day, and then we can now see the full outline of the Isle of Portland just beyond that. Well, we've made it to the top of the ridge, and this is where we join up with the Hardy Way, that 220-mile long-distance path that links places that have got a connection with author and poet Thomas Hardy. And it starts at Higher Bockhampton, where he was born, and finishes up at Stinsford Churchyard, where his heart is buried. It was opened in 1998. Now, at this point, you've got a choice. If you want to take a shortcut and shorten the walk, you can just start going back downhill towards Sutton Poyntz. But we're actually going to continue heading westwards along the South Dorset Ridgeway. Aha, a trig point, but sadly it looks like it's on private land, so we can get within about 30 yards of it, so we're going to have to bag it remotely from here. Now, earlier on in the video when we were down at Sutton Poyntz, I mentioned some barrows up here on the ridge, and you can see there's one in front of me here, and then a little bit further along there's a more prominent one on the top of that ridge. Well, folks, I'm keeping my eyes peeled for a boundary stone at the top of Spring Bottom. It doesn't show on a 1902 map or even a 1958 map, but it does show on a current Ordnance Survey map, although I can't find it at the moment. But what I can see just over on the right are some remains of a building, and that is what is left of North Down Barn. And well, it was here in the 17th century, and that shows on a 1902 map, but it's just ruins now. Well, good news, folks. The sun has reappeared, so hopefully we'll get to enjoy some decent views. So let me just show you some of them over to the south. So obviously the Isle of Portland and Weymouth is still a bit hazy in the distance, but some great view of Sutton Poyntz down in the valley below. Okay, well, we're going to continue to follow the Hardy Way along the ridge for a little bit before making our downward descent. But it's not the end of our uphill climbing for today, that's for sure. Well, we're continuing to head downhill, but from this spot are some terrific views of our next destination, the Iron Age Hillfort at Chalbury. And I'll tell you a little bit more about it when we get a little bit nearer. Well, we're nearly at the foot of the Chalbury Hillfort, so let me tell you a little bit about it. It's actually one of the earliest Iron Age Hillforts in Dorset, built around 800 BC. The more famous and bigger Iron Age Hillfort at Maiden Castle near Dorchester was built around 600 BC, although there had been Neolithic and Bronze Age activity on the site there before. There's the same situation here in that it looks like there was something here in the Bronze Age before the current Hillfort was built. And it consists of a single rampart between 0.3 metres and a metre high, and an external ditch forming a sort of D shape enclosing about 8.5 acres, and there's a gap entrance to the southeast, and there's something like 20 storage pits and evidence of 30 huts inside the fort. And within the enclosure there are a couple of much earlier Bronze Age bowl barrows. Well, the footpath back to Sutton Poyntz sort of circumnavigates round the bottom of the fort. It looks as though you could get up there from the other side, but it looks like it's fenced off this side, and well, nearly opening time at the pub. I think we'll give it a miss. But let me just pan the camera slowly around. So it's a shame that it's a little bit overcast now. Perfect temperature for walking in, and that's where we've been. So there's the White Horse Hill. And there's obviously Sutton Poyntz ahead, and there's the ridge that we've been walking along. This is a beautiful part of the county. Well, just coming back into Sutton Poyntz, coming through an area called the Puddle Docks, which well, at one stage there was a terrace of 19th century farm workers' cottages, and I think the Puddle Docks are fairly recent, but they're basically preserves the layout of the old dairy buildings that were here. Right, do you want a quick dip and a drink before we pop into the pub just to cool down? He says, yeah, that's nice and fresh down there, Dad. Bit chilly though. Yeah. Well, folks, here we are in the beer garden of the Springhead, just quality testing their ale. Pint of Doom Bar, lovely. And of course, as is traditional, time for some crisps, and it's Logan's favourite, Pipers. You tuck into those, fella. Well, I hope you enjoyed the walk today. If you did, please do give us a thumbs up and a like, and do leave a comment, and do check out our Facebook page, Dave's Countryside Walks. Well, the sun did come out eventually. So until we meet again, thanks for watching, and cheerio. Good boy. Another crisp.